a high school student in Southern California. And so, of course, where you ended up and who you are and where your ancestors got to, that's always the best. But I tried to say last time, a lot of that is asabiya or solidarity or, you know, just tribal love. It isn't an examined life. It isn't an examined life. So you should think how it got to the situation where in the name of crosses and things like that, we could literally decimate whole civilizations, not accidentally, purposefully. And by the way, it didn't just end with the Inquisitions and the American Indians and the South American Indians and those peoples. It was still going on in Yugoslavia recently. The butchering and killing that was going on in Yugoslavia in the name of some of, I'm not freeing Islam, by the way, here. And then, of course, the Holocaust, where literally millions of people were incinerated for some imagined sin of some kind, which is normally outlined in the New Testament. You know, you have to think where this violence comes from. And, so I think some of these symbols can be maybe encourage violence, even though they're supposed to be just the opposite. You think about that sometime, about bloody symbols. But to go back to these gods that we're talking about here, he's not drinking their blood or anything like that. You know, again, I'm on that subject. Drinking blood of gods goes back to the Greek religion, in the West anyway, in mystery religion ceremonies. This is how they express what they call mystery cults. And the god's blood, usually that was being drunk to get identification with the god in some symbolic way, were deities like Mithra or Dionysus, the Bacchae. And this usually tended to move towards a Bacchic frenzy when they did it. The Manes, the followers of Dionysus, would run around tearing people to bits in a kind of frenzy of intoxication of some sort. That was not maybe how it began, but that's what the trance that they got into, the wild frenzied trance that they got into from these ceremonies often ended up as, and that's how it's pictured in literature. So there is some kind of connection, I think, between these behavior patterns. This is not what we're seeing in the movie. I think we're seeing a much more mild or gentler form of activity, and that often comes in giving offerings to the so-called God, not in imbibing or eating the so-called God. Here there's no eating any God. It's just he's giving some food offerings to that particular God. Now that seems to be widespread in, I hate to say primitive religion, but widespread in indigenous religions around the world. If you go into a Thai restaurant, many of you have been in Thai restaurants, I'm sure, you often see statues there, don't you? And there are food offerings in front of the statues. It's usually Buddha or some representation of a Buddha. How many have seen that? Yeah, I mean, there's I don't know, pieces of squash or a drink of some kind in a little glass, or a banana maybe or something. They're sitting up there in front of the statue. That's pretty, when you think of it, that's very mild. All that showing is awe, obeisance, a kind of humbling yourself before that representation, whether you agree that things should be represented or not. And but there's no, I don't think there's any violence to it. Usually when people bring offerings to a deity, think about it, I've never thought about that before, but you think about it, it's usually a very non-violent situation. They're giving something, they're not taking something. That may be part of what I was trying to express, that the psychological patterns that erupt. So in the movie, it's all very gentle as far as this offering goes, isn't it? And there's a combination of Native American, you might call it pagan or indigenous religious feelings, sensibilities, with the more dominant Christian process that wiped over these areas in the conquistador, other activity of missionary behavior that we know occurred from the 1600s to the 1900s. So they basically combined the two, and the character meant to be you and me learns to accept it and participate in it. And as the movie shows, it's successful. Amarante does revive. So that's another important point. When people are at the end of their extremity, they don't know what to do, they don't know how to deal with something, they often turn to religion. And the religion they turn to is the one they're familiar with, or in this case, one that seems to be working for these people. And I think that's a pretty good representation of it. You want to comment on that aspect of the movie?
I noticed that Charlie Bloom even mentioned, as he said when he was talking to Amarante about how, they used to be pagan religions and that Christianity came. It was like boiling apart.
Any point that he made that you found specifically interesting, or just the whole description that it used to be pagan and then it became Christianized?
Just that he said that.
It's Amarante tells him, right? It's Amarante tells him? Or
No,
Charlie tells Amarante.
And
I didn't think Amarante would be able to put two thoughts together. He's sort of like George Bush. You can't make any more than 4-word sentences.
But he did try to do
I like Bush, by the way. I think he's funny. The other guy frightens me. So, I mean, I'm not putting him down by saying he can't speak. To me, that's a plus. The stupider someone is, sometimes they're actually pretty smart. So you can't go by outward appearance. Sometimes people think they're smart are actually pretty stupid. So it's just not something that I would say is a plus or a minus. So anyway, Charlie tells him the history of it. Charlie knows all of the history.
Yeah, and it's but there is.
Oh, it's true what he says. Yeah, it's certainly true. Anyway, so the movie maker shows sensitivity to that, and that's why we showed the movie, because the sensitivity to these kinds of things. If you watch enough history or Discovery Channel stuff, which is all I ever watch, usually on the boob tube, and I must watch a lot of it since it's my drug of choice. Being a tea, I don't drink or smoke or anything like that, so I'm entitled to a vice. And this vice lets me disappear from my family and all my connections. I just disappear, switching channels. I'm a sort of channel switcher, always looking for the lost El Dorado. And every evening I search for El Dorado and never find it. Some cheesy facsimile, but I think if I keep switching through the 500 or 600 channels, I might hit the jackpot sometime. It rarely happens. So last night I ended up watching about Athens in the classical age, and Zeus. That was a good substitute anyway. If you watch those things enough, you'll see that they had a thing on some time back about Peruvian, Indian, Native American